Okay, so last one for today, as far as news is concerned. Here's an interesting story that I feel like would be great for us to dig into, especially since of the overall theme. It seems like today has been, public safety, gun violence, um, and you know, the likes. So, headline that came across the other day. Shelby County's Community Services Director has a plan to address gun violence. And I just think that this is interesting since we're saying we need to come up with plans, things need to be implemented. There's marches on Beale Street right now or this past weekend um, where the Memphis community is letting it be known gun violence is not the way to go. You know, and then a couple of hours later, gun violence occurs downtown Memphis. Um, and so this story is of interest in that, series of thinking. So Shelby County's Community Services Director has a plan to address gun violence. Sandy Bromley wants to help the county and the city create a public health informed whole government approach to safety. And this was a few days ago, and this was actually before the shootings in the march from last weekend. So let's just see what she has to say. And just as a quick update, there was a former NYPD. I know he was an officer. I saw the headline, but I didn't take a strong look at it. Yep, mayor hires NYPD leader as public safety consultant. So we'll dig into that some, but let's jump into this story. So Sandy Bromley came to Memphis nearly 7 years ago to lead Memphis, the Crime Victims and Rape Center, Crisis Center, a county-run department that serves nearly 4,000 crime victims every year. In May, she was tapped to oversee the county's Division of Community Services, a vast portfolio that includes pretrial services, the Aging Commission, and behavioral health, among other services. Bromley's work also places her in the middle of the government's response to gun violence. She met with members of the National Offices of Violence Prevention Network at an event at the White House in May to collect insights from other cities. So we're definitely proactive in going to see what other cities are doing that are in similar situations. Just as an example, Mayor Paul Young, a part of the Bloomberg leadership program, and will be having his administrative team also participate, where they'll be able to network and make connections with other cities to find what works and implement it here if applicable. The work that I've done working with victims of crime over the years has really led me here, Bromley said during an interview with MLK 50 in late May. I know it's possible to heal from trauma. I know that with validation and support and help, it's possible to heal. So this is a Q&A. It's condensed and edited for clarity. Most of your background is in domestic violence. How did you prepare for that job that you have now? Or how did that prepare you for the job that you have now? I wanted to be a sports agent when I was in law school, but I ended up working for Public Housing Authority. I also saw women, mostly women with their kids, come into Public Housing Authority, and they said, hey, I'm getting evicted because a crime happened here last night, but I was the victim of that crime. That just made no sense to me whatsoever. Why would you hurt someone who's already hurting? That has since changed with the Violence Against Women Act. And so that's really what sort of directed me into the victim services world. And I've been doing that ever since. I have something I'd like to say, but I'll wait. How'd you make your way to Memphis? I work for Fairfax County in Virginia, and I was like their domestic violence systems coordinator, working with everyone from chief of police and judges. I got a little burned out doing community work, to be honest. So I went for a national organization, and I was contracted to do violence prevention training across the world. Then all right. And it's good to know her background and all the rest of that stuff. But I want to get into what this article has to explain about gun violence and acting on that gun violence. All right, so last year there were nearly 400 homicides in Shelby County. Where does the office or the Division of Community Service work overlap with that issue? Are crime victims, rape Rape Crisis Center is one of our agencies under the division. They serve about 4,000 victims each year. One part of that work is working with homicide survivors. So friends and family of those who were lost to homicide, but also they work with people affected by aggravated assault, which is gunshot survivors too. Gunshot survivors actually have very few resources in our community. You're oftentimes sort of mixed up very quickly by the hospital, and then you asked to rebuild your life when your entire assumptive world is shattered. We have a youth and family resource center in Raleigh that works with young people to commit low-level stuff like trespassing or breaking curfew. So they have a youth family resource center in Raleigh that work with young people who commit low-level stuff. We want them to come to our youth and family resource center and not go to juvenile court. We do an assessment and figure out what resources that family may need to put them on a different trajectory. That's good. Also, the division are pretrial and behavioral health services for justice-involved adults. Pretrial is when you're trying to figure out the background and other information of the person who's accused of crime, so that the judicial commissioner can make a good bail decision. And then we also do lots of programming to make sure that we're getting the classes that these folks might need, again, to change their trajectory, and also making sure that they show up for court. So things like text messaging them, making sure that we're just helping folks get through the criminal justice process. That's amazing. That's amazing. All right. So that's two things that she referenced right now as a part of her job is the Youth and Family Resource Center. All right. That help young youth with things like trespassing or breaking curfew, that's kind of corny if you're not getting in trouble for it, but I guess it starts somewhere, but still, trespassing? You're going to put somebody in the system for trespassing? I guess it depends on the situation. Maybe they reduce something else to that. Mm-hmm. All right. And then the other is pretrial, where you're trying to catch them before they slip through any cracks. Mayor Lee Harris chose you to go to the White House recently for a gun violence summit. Any insights gained from the meeting with other communities that are similar to Shelby County? All right, so the National Offices of Violence Prevention Network hosted us with the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. There were about 50 total offices from across the country that went there. I've been working with them since last fall to learn from the national folks, but then also other folks in other communities that have these types of offices, because we want to create some sort of office of community safety or office of violence prevention. We're not sure what it's going to be called yet, but we're actually working towards that with the city of Memphis and with the health department to try to build out some infrastructure around holistic response to violence and the community safety. That didn't really explain too much to me. I'll be honest, it didn't explain much at all. There's a lot of research in support of taking what people call a public health approach to addressing gun violence or firearm injuries. Do you feel like the county is on that path? Is the government using that as a guide, or are you all guided by something else? The approach that we are taking is certainly similar to a public health approach. It's a little bit a combination of everything. I happen to be on Mayor Paul Young's Public Safety Transition Committee also, and we created for him this community safety continuum. Also, there's very much a lot of public health principles throughout the plan. So it's public health informed, but also a whole government approach. That's what we're hoping this new office will do, pulling together all of those different government agencies that have touched on those things and do it better. Most people think, well, when we are able to see this at work, when will we be able to see this at work? Maybe not the impact, but when will we be able to call on this Office of Violence Prevention for help? Both city and county mayors are on board and understand its importance. We are actually hiring a director for our office right now and working with the city to figure out whether it's going to be a shared leadership model and how that's going to practically work. The community safety continuum is the idea that we cannot just rely on traditional approaches to public safety. It's broken up as a prevention and intervention, suppression and law enforcement, and transformation. The prevention and intervention is really what this new office is going to be working on. And that is most likely things like group violence intervention. The office will also have a role in the transformation part. We're just trying to convene people, have them learn from one another, collaborate, and apply for more funding. Right now, funding is a really big issue. We got an influx of money early on in the pandemic around this issue, and now it's trickled out, and we've got some sustainability issues right now. A lot of this work has been set up using American Rescue Plan Act or ARPA dollars. And so now we've got to think through how we're going to truly sustain this. Why is it hard for folks to get funding for community violence intervention? It's a paradigm shift. We're saying that public safety is not just your traditional public safety. All I know of our budgets lie in traditional public safety. And we certainly don't want to cut budgets for the work that's happening. And so we're asking for more money to go towards public safety, but for a different project. This is going to take some time for folks to wrap their minds around. Yes, it's important to fund our courts and our law enforcement, but it's also important to fund people doing outreach work and stopping people from retaliating in the streets. Okay, so this is interesting. I mean, it's great. It's great that, they're trying to come from another approach. This doesn't really address guns violence. I guess it does, but you have to have community interaction or the interaction of the people that are involved in these things. And I guess really what they're saying is someone that might be a victim of, or it may happen to, would have someone to reach out to stop from that situation from happening, or for them to intervene with, I don't know, the other party or what have you. All right, so we talked about it. So yeah, so the Division of Community Services, they have a youth and family resource center in Raleigh that works with young people who commit low level, like trespassing or breaking curfew. We talked about that for a moment. And they want them to go through their youth and family resource center and not go to juvenile court. I mean, it's a great thing, but for these types of charges, I'm just wondering how impactful is that ultimately? Because you don't want them to end up in the system. You would rather them end up in a program that's going to do something to boost them, like they said, put them on a different trajectory. We want them to go to the moon. We want you to shoot for the stars. You know what I mean? And maybe this would be the type of thing that would allow them to do that or help them. We do assessment and figure out what resources them and their family may need. And then they said the pretrial, when we're trying to figure out background and other information on persons who's accused of crime, so that the judicial commissioner can make a good bail decision and then give them classes. Actually, you know what? That would be a good idea. Because, all these bonds and so on and so forth that they're giving, and we're having the issue with the bond system, if they made it mandatory that while you're out on bond, as a condition of your bond, you have to be a part of this program for 6 hours a day, every single day. And if you miss a day, then your bond will be revoked. I mean, that's actually a great thing. They use that in other areas. And so where you're required to go to some type of programming that would hopefully curb how you think about that specific thing. So that is good. I like what they're doing there. I like that they have that in place to catch someone that might be involved in a crime. And so the last part of this really went into, so they're hiring a director, they're trying to get the people in place, then they're going to go back and apply for more funding. So I'll give you an example. Like if you get a DUI, you could do 30 days in jail. So this is on a very, 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 very low end of the spectrum or on the scale, right? But if you get a DUI, you can go to jail for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever, depending on the number of DUIs you've had, and I have not had. But I'm just, as an example, you can go to jail for that amount of time, or they may send you to a treatment program because you may have a record or identify with having a alcoholism or a substance abuse problem. So they send you to that program in hopes, well, for one, keeping you out of the jail system, out of that facility, but in hopes to rewire your thinking on drinking and driving or substance abuse and whatever that thing is, breaking the law. And so that helps a lot of people. You know, drug court helps a lot of people, and you're put into programs. You're held to a certain standard of where you need to complete X, Y, Z in order to move on from that program and go on with the rest of your life if you choose to make the right decision. But you're given a choice. In a lot of these lower level crimes, and even some of the other crimes, you know, so if you have a gun, if you might be young and you have a gun and you fire in a public place, this is before you get to the point where you're shooting at people and they catch you, right? Or even if you're involved in whatever the crime is, it doesn't matter what it is. And you go to jail and you're up for your bail hearing. And you're given a certain amount of things you need to be doing every single day, not just once or twice, every single day. Even if you have a job, if you were in jail, you wouldn't be able to work. You know what I mean? So you have to now dedicate your time to this program. And you have to get it signed off, and we have to know that you're going through the program. That will catch certain people and help them, you know, because obviously a lot of this crime is, you know, so mental health issues, it has like a negative connotation, but I mean, it's a real thing. And there's really, I mean, it can be negative, but there's strength in that also if you're addressing it and doing something about it. And so putting people into that pipeline instead of in jail makes sense to me. And that gives benefit to the entire community. And it can actually turn that person in from whatever wrong they were doing at that point in time. It can cycle it through and they can actually end up becoming a benefit to the community. Now I understand that the dollars aren't there and they're creating something that didn't exist before. So there's not a funding column for this particular thing, but they need to find it. And especially if the taxes were raised, and we've already talked about, you know, it would end up having to fall under the taxes, I guess, being raised, sales tax and so on and so forth. But that would be an outstanding start to beginning an initiative to get people into a pipeline that could potentially save their lives and save hundreds of people's lives around their community, in their family, so on and so forth. It has a ripple effect that is positive in nature, and it won't be seen immediately necessarily, but it definitely can be seen over the years. I've seen a lot of these things, type of things work. And it's an amazing thing when it does work. So I take my hat off to them for putting something on the table, and hopefully it will transpire. Hopefully they'll get the funding. We'll check back and see what else is going on with this one also. Again, we'll have the Memphis City Council meeting this afternoon, and obviously we'll do the breakdown of that and see what all they have to say inside that in that meeting. Again, please comment, and let me know your thoughts on these particular subjects. I think that they're important. They're important to our entire our community, and yeah, it might not be the most interesting, thing, but this is where we start at. At the end of the day, it all starts with an idea. It all starts with conversation. Conversation sparks ideas. So please comment, subscribe to the channel and the platform. And I just appreciate you being here. If you've taken the time to view the video, I appreciate you. And I'll see you a little later on. We'll see you during the city council meeting. All right. Have a great one.